How much is that compensation?
I'm sorry, say that again.
What percentage is that compensation?
What exactly is it?
Yeah, what
Is that what you
percentage?
said? Well, see, if we go in here to create, if we go over here to create, and I'm going to come in here to create, and I'm going to create a graphic here on the draw page. I'm going to create a circle. And now I'm going to go over here to quick create. I'm going to turn off the satin border. I'm going to choose pattern fill. And I'll just click here and make an object. Oh, let me, this is still reset from the other night. Okay. So, oh. So what we have here, if I zoom in on this, and if I go to 2D view, is basically stitches that are just running back and forth. Okay? Let me go back here to quick create. Let me go into this, change this to no underlay. So I took the underlay stitches out that were running up and down. And so all we really have are stitches running side to side. I'm going to change the density on this to about 8 because I just want the stitches to be open up. And you can see the little stitch insertion points there. Okay? Now notice that this looks like a perfect circle. And if we stitch this out on something that had no stretch to it, like cotton broadcloth, this would probably stitch out as a circle. But if we stitched it out on something like fleece that has a lot of stretch to it, it would turn into an oval. So what I would have to do is come in here to the properties and add a compensation amount. Now I can never remember what these numbers range is, so I always just type in 1,000, which I know is invalid, and I click apply here, and a little error message comes up and says, enter an integer between 0 and 20. So I say, thanks very much. I'm going to enter 20 here. I'm going to move this out of the way. And now I want you to watch the edge of this and watch what happens. I'm going to click apply. And you see how the stitches stick out on the sides, but not on the top and the bottom, because the number of needle points here was not much. So they didn't put a lot of pull compensation in there. And pull compensation is something where the stitches cause tension to go that way, and they cause tension they cause tension to go this way. So to fight that and to try and ensure that these stitches all stay underneath the little border line that I put there, you might have to add compensation. This is why you must always do a test stitch out. And if you don't have a test garment that you can stitch out, then what you need to do is go to your local Goodwill store, find something that is the same percent polyester and cotton or whatever, whatever it is that you want to stitch out your project on, and take that home. And then stitch this out on that particular garment. And then what you can do is take a Sharpie and write on this thing compensation 20 fill pattern equals 3 or whatever, okay? And then you put this in one of those little plastic folders that goes inside of protect documents that go inside a 3-ring binder, and you go ahead and save this. So the next time you go to do something like this, you've got notes left over here on what it is that you were doing. And your circle doesn't have to be giant like mine was here. I drew it large so that you could see it. If it was smaller, if it was part of a logo or something and only the size of a quarter, then you would still have to use pull compensation. Particularly if you have a border around here. Let's say this had a border on it that had yellow threads. I want that edge of this to be covered up. Okay, so I'll have to put pull compensation in. But nothing does a better job than a test stitch out.
Okay, that didn't answer my question.
Okay.
Mine was specific to that rose. I wanted
To
to
the
know
what? To the rose? Yeah.
I wanted to know what the amount of the compensation was to that particular pattern.
There's no way to tell.
It doesn't list it when you
No.
can't bring that to the properties.
No.
Okay.
No. It's you have to go in and in modify, you can add compensation, but you can only add like from a range of 1 to 5 at a time. But you can keep adding and adding if you want. You could add 5 and then say, you know what, I want to add 5 more, or add 5 and then I want to add 3 more, or whatever, you know. But no, you can't do that, and you have to do it for each and every sub-piece of that rose, because each and every sub-piece is what we call a stitch object. And each stitch object has its own properties. And in a design as complex as that rose, you can't simply select them all and use global properties and then say, I want to globally add compensation of 5, because that just might not work out. You know, you have to think about it like a wedding gown. You know, a wedding gown is made of what, probably 500 separate pieces of fabric. And if somebody says like, okay, make this wedding gown for my daughter, she wears a size 3 or something, and then she puts it on and it's too tight, I can't just say, well, why don't you just go in and change the compensation, add some compensation, and then magically the whole dress will get larger. Well, that won't happen. If she needs more room in the bra part of the dress, then that's where you have to enlarge it. If her waist is very small, but her breasts are very large, you're going to have to enlarge the brassiere part of the dress, not the waist. Her waist is just fine. And not the length, because the length is just fine. She's 5 foot 4 inches tall, and the hem just barely touches the floor, and that's what we wanted. You know, so you can't just like add an inch magically to the whole wedding dress. And it's the same thing with embroidery designs. There is no magic formula that you can go in there and just say, I'll just change this number and it's done.
But it doesn't tell you when you go in onto one of the objects on that rose how much the compensation was.
No.
Okay.
No.
Tim,
Nothing.
would it be fair?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Would it be fair to say that the larger the embroidery design, the greater the amount of compensation you need?
No. That's
No.
no.
Okay.
Because if it doesn't have a border around the outside,
Mm-hmm.
okay, like this, if I undid this and undid the density, for example, and went back, let's see, go back to 3D view. This looks just fine, okay, without a border, okay, it looks like a circle,
Mm-hmm.
okay, it looks just fine like a circle. Now, if I go back in here and say, okay, you know what I want to do? I want to change the compensation. I'm going to increase the compensation to 20. Let me move this. Now watch the edges of it. It's just a little bit bigger, okay?
Yeah.
But when it stitches out, we go to life view again. You can hardly tell it here, okay, that it's a little bit wider. And when this stitches out on fleece and the pull compensation that is exerted, that's pulling that way and this way, okay, it will make this thing perfectly round. Maybe, but you have to do a test stitch out.
Yeah.
But if you go in here and say, no, what I'm going to do, I want to change this from no border line to, say, a triple stitch border line, and I want to have a color change for the border. I want to have a yellow border around this. And I say, okay, that's why those things stick out like this. Because this is just a triple running line and it's pulling against itself all around, so its shape will not change at all. But here on this fill pattern, because it has so much pull and pull compensation that way, it will move these stitches so they're right underneath of there. Okay? And that can only be judged with a test stitch out. It could be you test stitch out this and you say it's not good. So you have to come back in here, right click, go back to properties here, say let's change the compensation, say to 12. I'm making a big change because I want to see it here. I click apply. You say, okay, maybe this will work out. Let's stitch this out. So you stitch this out, and then if it works out, then you make a note. You know, you save these samples. You say, for this particular stitch object, at which was 57.3 millimeters wide and 54.9 millimeters tall, it has a pull compensation of 12. And you put that in a little folder, and the next time somebody says, could you make my logo for my business? It's a ball like this with a triangle behind it. So I'd like it, to be about this big, like the logo I saw you made for Charlie's tire store down the street. Well, now you have all the information you need for this, okay? Plus the fact that you saved an EDO file, because that's what we're looking at here, an EDO file. This is not a stitch file. You can come in here, look at this logo, right-click on this and say, okay, let me look at this. Okay, it had low underlay, compensation of 12, fill pattern of 3. Okay, let me write all this down here so that I know what I'm doing, plus the fact that if I had created a design with this and a square behind it, let's say a logo for one company, and another guy wants a triangle behind it, I can call this EDO in. Okay, when I say, let me go ahead, I want to do a new project now. And I can say, load existing design.
How much is that compensation?
I'm sorry.